Class 5A, how to talk to an atheist, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Because think about it. To believe that all things came into being without a creator, I mean, either someone made the world or the world made itself. Either someone made the world or the world made itself. I just don't have enough faith to be an atheist. I mean, are we going to look behind every star, every planet, every galaxy to know that there's not a God there? No, we can't know that. So the amount of faith it takes to believe that there is no God, that takes a lot of faith to believe that, because you can't really know that. So tonight, before we talk about how to talk to an atheist, I would like just to give a short, my case for evidence for God here in Michigan. Okay, so can we present a case that there's a God, even from the things we see and observe here in Michigan? Well, I think we can. The first one is, let's say you're walking down the street and you observe this mad scientist guy with a lab coat, and he was pushing grass into a machine, pressing a button, and in a matter of minutes, out was coming drinkable white milk. You might stop and go, whoa, where did that come from? Now, if the scientist goes, I don't know, it just kind of appeared. Or it just kind of evolved over millions of years. I mean, you would laugh, right? The first question, if you saw this guy pushing straw and hay and dirt and grass into his machine, pressing the button, and out came drinkable white milk, your first question would be, whoa, who invented that? Who made that? So if you said, dude, I don't know, it just evolved, you say, no, really, who made it? I mean, think about it. If a mad scientist could make a machine that you could stuff grass and hay and dirt and rocks into it, I mean, we could feed the world. Just make these machines and send them out into the world, dairy products for everybody. But no scientist is smart enough to make a machine that you can stuff grass and hay into this machine, press a button, and out come drinkable white milk. No one's smart enough to make it. And I've had people at Harvard say, well, someday we will. And you're probably right. Someday we probably will. The point is, it would take a very smart person to make that kind of machine, but no one yet is smart enough, because it takes a really smart person to do that. But here's the point. The machine already exists, and man didn't make it. So if we would take a very smart person, multiple smart people, to make a machine that you could put grass into it and make milk, but no one's smart enough to do that, but the machine already exists, which we know as the cow. The question then becomes, if the machine already exists, but we just told ourselves it would take a very, 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 very smart person to do it, the ultimate question would be then, who made the... Yeah, we see cows and stuff like that all the time. We just like, well, there's a cow. But we don't realize that something as silly as a cow glorifies God. It shows that there's a mind, an intelligence, a creator behind the creation, okay? Well, that's C. Cow. How about this one? Man, I hate acorns in oak trees. I mean, this is fall, right? So we're raking leaves, and these acorns fall on the ground. They start sprouting little trees, oak trees and stuff. And one day I was raking my leaves in this big oak tree, and I saw this little oak tree in my lawn. And then I saw the little acorn. I was like, wait a second. I'm looking at this acorn, and I'm looking up at this oak tree, looking at this acorn, looking at this tree. I mean, when I was growing up, I watched the X-Files, right? The X-Files. You had these alien intelligence, and they were planning stuff in people. I'm thinking, this little acorn has all the DNA information in it to build this oak tree. This little acorn is alien. It's X-Files. This acorn has squirrels eat this. Squirrels eat this little stick, but there's enough genetic material packed in there. I mean, can you imagine if a scientist said, ladies and gentlemen, in this little microchip, you put it in the dirt, and in a matter of years, you're going to get a big tree. We'd go, whoa, that would be amazing. But nobody is smart enough to make that. So cows and acorns, I think, show a pretty cool creator, designer. How about this one? One day, I was walking out to my mailbox, and there was a spider staring me right in the eyes. I don't like spiders. So that little Spidey guy, I went, hoya, and I flicked him off my mailbox. And he was like, whoo! I mean, I flicked him good. And he was out a good, like this far. He shot a spider web mid-air, right back to my mailbox, swung down, detached, and ran off. And then I think he was telling me I was number one on the way off. He was running away and telling me I was number one on the way off. But I was like, whoa, that's pretty incredible, right? Because like the whole Spider-Man thing is that this dude makes this little machine thing, and he can wha-cha, wha-cha, wha-cha. And I'm like, that's every kid's dream, right? To make this Spidey thing that you could like shoot spider webs. And I just like saw it. I thought they made that stuff up for the comic books. But here's a spider. He can shoot a web and detach and run away. I was like, stink. That's pretty awesome. I mean, human beings can't make that kind of stuff. We want to, but we can't. But the machine already, what? Exists. So who made the spider? Who made the acorn? Who made the cow? I mean, just common things around us, like cows and acorns and spiders, I think give evidence for a creator. Well, last one. How many of you guys are good at drawing things? Anybody? Most of us aren't, okay? So if I asked you to take a look at an eagle and pencil draw an eagle, how would you do? Yeah, horrible, right? I mean, it's really fun to watch people draw stuff. It's like, ooh, that's pretty bad, dude. But look, it's like, that's not so great, right? So imagine, we can't even draw an eagle, okay? We can't even draw it proportionally. Okay, now make that drawing come alive. That's what you're saying if there's no God. We can't even draw an eagle. How about make an eagle come alive? Right? Eagles do nose dives. They can see for miles away. We can't even draw an eagle, let alone make an eagle. I didn't know there was eagles in Michigan. That's why I use this illustration, right? So we can go for cows, acorns, spiders, and eagles. Just common stuff that are in Michigan. They're so amazing, people can't make it, but they exist. Therefore, I think there's good evidence, there's a case that can be made that there's an intelligence, there's a designer, there's a God behind, there's a creator behind the creation. And by the way, the introduction to how God introduces himself in the Bible is what? In the beginning, God, he introduced himself as creator. Creator. Okay, so the definition of atheism, okay? What is the definition of atheism? Well, if you put an A before a word, it cancels it out. So if you put an A, which means non, before the Greek word theos, so if you tonight believe in God, you believe in God, you're a theist, which comes from the Greek word theos, which means God. So tonight if you believe in God, you're a theist. And so if you put an A before the Greek word theos, that means non-God. So if you're an atheist, you're claiming that there is no God. Now, a skeptic would say, I don't know. But an atheist is saying there is no God. No God. That's what an atheist is. Now, how does someone become an atheist? I mean, you might think to yourself tonight, cows and acorns and spiders and eagles. A child can understand that. So how does someone become an atheist? Well, number one, I think sociology matters. Culture and geography do matter. If you were raised in a homeschool family, a Christian homeschool family here in Michigan, most likely you're going to believe in God. Well, if you grew up in pre-Soviet Union, Albania, in an atheist home, in an atheist country, most likely where no one talks about God, no one thinks of God, no one discusses God, no one goes to church, it very well could be that you may not believe in God. Just like today, you go to these secular European, post-Soviet Union, post-communist countries where people don't even think about God, they don't talk about God, they don't go to church, you find a lot of what? Atheists, because sociology and sociological matters do matter. It does matter where you're brought up. Hardship. How could God exist with so much evil, right? That is the number one issue that people struggle with. Okay, maybe they once believed in God, but because of X, Y, and Z happened in their life, therefore there is no God. That is the number one challenge to our faith, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight after this class is over, is how could God exist if there's evil in the world? And lastly, bad religion. A distortion of religion and Christianity often breeds atheists, right? How many would say that you've met somebody that they do not believe anymore because of a bad experience with church or religion? Raise your hand. Okay, some of us, yeah. I work with a guy that, he's struggling with his faith because, he grew up in a cult. And it just distorted his whole worldview. And so a lot of people walk away from God altogether. They throw the baby out with the bathwater just because of a bad religious experience. Now, do these three things, say, yeah, that makes sense? No, I'm just saying that these are three reasons that people often give that makes them atheists. Well, letter A tonight, let's talk about encountering atheists and embarrassment. I remember I had a pastor with me, and we were witnessing out in Boston, and he said he encountered these evolutionary evangelists. They had their own shirts, and they were evolutionary evangelists. They were walking around trying to find people to talk to convert them to atheism evolution. And this pastor said, man, these guys are good. I didn't know how to answer them. And here's this pastor, and he said, I felt embarrassed. And I just consoled him. He was old enough to be my dad, but I just consoled him, put my arm around him. I said, look, never, ever, ever be embarrassed if you can't defend God or explain God or answer some of these evolutionary evangelists. Here's the reason why. Go to Romans chapter 1 in your phone or in your Bible. Go to Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 20. See, some of us here tonight, we think, well, I can't answer the hard questions, I'm not a scientist. I don't know how to talk to people about God or evolution. So I just want to make sure tonight that we just have a perspective here on God's word on encountering atheists and the embarrassment that sometimes we might feel. Okay? So in Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 20, it says, having been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. So here in Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 20, the Bible teaches that from the things that are made, men are without excuse that there's a maker. Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 20 teaches that the things that have been made, people are without an excuse to say, I don't have enough evidence that there's a God. The Bible says that the things that are made, cows, acorns, spiders, and eagles, we're not even talking about genetics or DNA. We're just talking about cows, acorns, spiders, and eagles. Just basic things. God says, because those things are made, and man didn't make them, mankind has no excuse to say, I don't have enough evidence. Does that make sense, guys? When it comes to now the whole Christian faith, I think we need to give an answer. But when it comes just to, is there a God? Is there a God? The Bible says they don't need the Bible. They don't need you. They don't need an evangelist. They don't need a missionary to tell them that there's a God. Because creation shows that there is a creator. Make sense? Just like when I see a book, I know that a book reveals a book what? Maker. A painting shows a painter. I don't have to meet the painter. I don't have to meet the author. I know books don't write themselves. Paintings don't paint themselves. So, look at this verse in Psalms 19, verses 1 through 2. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies show forth their handiwork. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they display knowledge. So the heavens are revealing the night sky when you walk out and you see it on a nice summer night. The heavens, the visible heavens, the nature. Psalms 19 says, the heavens declare the glory of God. What does that mean? You say, whoa, the universe is huge. Where did it come from? How did it get here? How could space go on and 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 on? Well, if God is eternal and God is big, God made a universe that represents what he's like. Because God is big and massive and powerful and eternal, God made a big, powerful, massive, eternal-ish kind of universe that says, hey, whoever put this here, however this got here, it's got to be pretty awesome. So the heavens declare the glory of God. They pour forth speech. It declares knowledge about who God is. So that's why you never ever have to feel embarrassed about giving an answer or an evidence about God's existence. Romans 1 says the one thing that God will use to be a judge for all the world is that they have to first acknowledge that there is a God and they are not. And if you fudge on that one, you're in big trouble. Romans 1 says the very first foundational concept that everyone's going to be judged on is there's a God and you're not. But people make trees God, they make animals God, they make themselves God, they make people God, they worship statues and idols. Wrong. Romans 1, Psalms 19 declare that God is shouting. Here's the point. You can't give a better sermon than God does. You say, well, I don't have an answer. I can't. Look, you can't give a better sermon than God. God gives a massive, awesome sermon every single day and every single night, and you can't outdo him. The heavens declare the glory of God. You can't do better than that. So when someone says, I don't believe in God, show him. He's like, I mean, I can't do better than God. I mean, what am I going to do? Now, if someone says, well, I believe in God, I just want to know who he is. Now we're talking. See, a belief in God is what they call self-evident. Or, as they say in junior high, it's a no-brainer. It's just simple. There is a God. The question now becomes, who is this God? So if someone says to you, I don't have any evidence, I need more, I've had people follow me to my van. Follow me to my van and demand me to prove God to them. And if I can prove God to them, then they'll believe. See, I can feel like, whoa, I mean, I gotta prove God. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, I can't bring God and put him in a petri dish and show me. What am I going to do? I'm embarrassed. I don't know. I failed. When it comes to God, everybody will be judged based on the knowledge that they do have and that there is a creator and you're the creation. And if you get that wrong, you don't have anything to stand on. That's basic entry level number one. Make sense? So, the bottom of your page is that God is declaring from the things that are made, that things made need a what? Maker, come on class. Things designed need a designer. And we know art needs a artist. That's basic common sense, elementary logic. Paintings don't paint themselves. Design doesn't design themselves. And things made don't make themselves. I mean, buildings don't do that. Your clothes don't do that. Your eyeglasses don't do that. Mouses don't do that. Computers don't do that. Carpet doesn't do that. Tables, books don't. I mean, it's just common sense that we know that things don't make and design themselves. Okay? So letter B is, how does the human heart impact God's clear evidence? This is fascinating. Sad, but fascinating. Turn your Bibles to John chapter 11, verses 38 through 53. See, you say, well, okay, if this is so clear, if this is so easy and God's going to use his clear evidence to judge humanity, you say, well, I don't get it. Why do so many people not believe? Good question. Well, John chapter 11 and John chapter 12 give us an answer. So when you look up John chapter 10, you immediately know what John chapter 11 is about, right? So John chapter 11 is about Lazarus. It's one of Jesus' greatest miracles. I mean, hello, if you can raise someone from the dead, that's pretty good evidence. So John chapter 11, so if someone says, I need some evidence, I need some proof, or Jesus rose somebody from the dead, dun, 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 bring him right in front of you, you can touch him, see him, smell him, someone rose from the dead, that's some good evidence, right? So in John chapter 11, Jesus rises someone from the dead. He comes out of the tomb. They unwrap the body. I mean, that's I mean, that's you can't get any better evidence than that, right? So now look at John chapter 11, starting in verse 51. So now, okay, let's do 45, okay? Many of the Jews therefore had come with Mary and had seen what he did, meaning raising Lazarus from the dead, and believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. So the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered the council and said, "What are we to do? For this man performs many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and the nation." But one of them said, Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year, and said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you understand that it is better for you that one man die for the people than the whole nation should perish." He did not say this on his own accord, but that being the high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation. And not for the nation only, but also to gather into one children of God who were scattered abroad. So, from that day, they made plans to put him to death. Show me the money, Jesus, and I'll believe in you. Don't believe a word of it. I mean, Jesus rose someone from the dead. Evidence exhibit A. Touch him. Woo, you've been in the grave, Lazarus. And instead of believing and falling down on their knees and worshiping Jesus, they don't believe and they plot to kill the one who rose him from the dead? Now it gets worse. It gets worse. Go to John chapter 12, verses 9 through 11 in your notes, okay? John chapter 12, verses 9 through 11. When the large crowd of Jews learned that Jesus was there, they came not only on account of him, but also to see Lazarus. Yeah, that's a pretty cool miracle, right? They went to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to put Lazarus to death as well. It's not all about the evidence, folks. It's not all about the evidence. Don't you ever think that if you can't produce the evidence that will make someone believe, then you failed. Don't believe a word of it. Jesus Christ raises from the dead, and instead of bowing down, they want to kill him and kill the evidence. There's something going wrong here. It's called the human heart. And by the way, the human heart doesn't look like this, right? So where did that idea of the human heart come from? Well, in the beginning, God made our affections and our desires and our emotions and our intellect to be vertical, to be towards him, to be focused on him. And when sin came into the world, what sin did as it entered into man, what sin did was that sin turned man's mind, man's heart, man's emotions, and man's affections inward. It turned man's heart inward and selfish. So the heart comes from a theological idea that man's desires once were going towards God, but now it's come and become selfish and inward. Man's heart is corrupt, and it's not all about the evidence, guys. So don't ever think that it's all about the evidence. So go back to Romans chapter 1, verse 18. Look what it says here. Romans chapter 1, either in your Bible or here on the screen. Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 19. It says, "The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of men." So what that is saying is that God is saying, time's up. Time's up. Time's up. And he's doing that every single day. Time's up. That's why you're still living and breathing. That's God's grace. Because God doesn't do that for all people. He says your time's up and you're done. So the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the ungodliness and wickedness of men who suppress, that's a key word, suppress the truth by their what? Wickedness. Since what, look at this, since what may be known about God is plain to them. Now that Greek word suppress means literally to push away, right? When you were growing up, sorry mom, but when you were growing up and your mom, heated something funky on the stove and you didn't like it, broccoli or something, and your mom serves you broccoli, what did you do as a little kid? You were like, oh, and you push away the broccoli. Well, God to most people is broccoli. The concept of God, that there's someone in the universe telling them what to do, they push God away. Even though there's clear evidence that what may be known about God is plain to them, it says in their wickedness, they'll push him away. So man's heart does affect the evidence. Man is not neutral. Now, does evidence work for some people? Yes. But is evidence the issue on the table when it comes to God's existence? No. No. Okay, so a good question to know whether or not the problem is an intellectual problem or chiefly a spiritual problem, what could you ask somebody? If someone says, well, show me the evidence and I'll believe. Prove to me there's a God. Okay. How would you know if this person is just giving you a problem or he's really spiritually interested, right? Well, here's a great question you could write down. If you had sufficient evidence for God's existence, would you bow your knee to him and obey him? If tonight you had sufficient evidence that there was a God, would you bow your knee to him and obey him? And obey him. Yeah. So that's the question. How do you know if this person this is just an intellectual problem, or this person is purely a spiritual problem, meaning it's a heart problem? Because some people, like when I talk to Asian people, a lot of them, they've never heard a case for the existence of God. They live in a communist country. They live in a godless country. And for someone to talk about God, it's very intriguing. They're very interested, right? I had a Chinese student at MSU once say, I always wanted to come to America and become a Christian. Wow. That's awesome, right? Because they're leaving communism and they're coming to a country where they can think about God, explore God, finally get a Bible, and they want to know God. She said, oh, someone knocked on my door and I'm Christian now. And I said, oh, who were they? She said, Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. And I was like, stink. They're out doing what we should be doing, right? Reaching those poor people that are looking for him, okay? So if you had sufficient evidence for God's existence, would you bow your knee to him and obey him? If they say no, is that an intellectual problem? They don't have enough evidence? Or is that a spiritual problem? That's a spiritual problem. So if someone says, well, yeah, of course. Oh, then maybe they're open. But if they say, no, not really, no. Yeah, that's a spiritual problem. It's not about the evidence. So letter C, so when you meet somebody, sometimes it's how do you know if this person is open or closed, right? You guys might remember that when I posted this lecture earlier for earlier students, I uploaded this on YouTube, and probably 10 minutes later I get a call from New Mexico, and I knew exactly who it was. It was an atheist evangelist on the phone trying to convert me. Now, do you think that guy was open or closed? I'm not going to, I'm just not going to talk to him. He's closed. I can't convince this guy. I'm not God. He has a heart problem, and I can't convince this guy. Neither can you. So, how do you know if this guy is open or closed? Does this person need more answers, or is this person simply being rebellious? Right? When that guy called me on the phone, he did not need more answers. He was not looking for answers. He was looking to debate me. And isn't it funny when it comes to the existence of God, people get really, really angry, and they get really, really heated, and they get really, really passionate about this? Why do you think that is? Because it's essentially a heart problem. Because they know the moment they say, yes, there's a God, they're saying, okay, the scales have now tipped. There is a creator, and I'm not him. And I'm the creation. Big C, little c. The scales have tipped. Right? But when I talk to someone like an Asian student at MSU and they say, and I talk about God and the evidence for God and they're like all interested, I mean, that's great. I mean, because they're open, right? Because they've never really heard that before. So levels of interaction, are they open or closed? Now, I have a really fun video to give you guys a mental break.
I was reading this thing in the news several months ago, and it was this is a news story talking about the existence of atheist megachurches. I mean, what do you do there? Do you sing worship songs at an atheist church? What do you say? Like, shout to the void, all the earth, let us sing. Power and majesty, praise to nothing. What do you sing to? Man, do they have children's church at the atheist megachurch? What songs do you sing to kids at an atheist church? Like, no one loves the little children, all the children of the world. No one hears you when you cry, no one hears your lullaby. No one loves the little children of the world. Reason why we exist, but there's no reason why. Reason why we exist, but there's no reason why. A row, row, row your boat gently down the reef. Wallowing, 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 wallowing in your unbelief. Let's do the rounds. Remember the rounds? No, you don't want to do that. Okay. Let's try a new one. Evolution, this I know, for Charles Darwin told me so. Accidentally alive. If you're weak, you won't survive. That's the logic, right? That's what they're saying. I am an A, I am an A-T, I am an A-T-H-E-I-S-T, and I have N-O-T-H-I-N-G to give me hope and certainty, and when I D-I-E, I will be A-L-O-N-E. Hey!
This next part then, level 1, stating the obvious. So we've kind of given you like a theology of atheism, okay? So this class is talked about, how do you talk to an atheist? What do you do? What do you say? If you tried to get into the ring to talk to them, like, what would you even say, okay? So now we're going to talk about how to talk to an atheist, okay? So what would you say? Well, the first thing you could say is, do you believe that a building needs a builder? If they say no, I mean, come on, right? Just stating the obvious, right? If you want to talk to an atheist, you want to talk to a skeptic, you want to talk to someone who doesn't believe in God or they're questioning God, they have questions about God, just state the obvious. I mean, do you believe that buildings need builders? Yeah. Okay. So how much faith do you think it takes to believe that buildings have builders? Faith? Yeah, like how much faith do you think it takes to believe that a building needs a builder? Faith? Well, I guess not much. Yeah, because you don't see buildings build themselves. It doesn't take a lot of faith, because it's pretty much what? Self-evident. So if it doesn't take a lot of faith or barely any faith to believe that buildings need a builder, just keep going out to the more complex things like life and the universe and, well, if a building needs a builder, then creation needs a what? Yeah. Have you ever seen a painting that didn't have an artist? I love this next question. Have you ever seen a painting that didn't have an artist? Why not? I like that little jab at the end, Why not? Because they have to give an answer to that. Have you ever seen a painting that didn't have an artist? Why not? Because they have to admit that you can have that paint kit sit there all day long, and that paint is not going to go, and paint the Mona Lisa. I guess she was a hot chick for her day, the Mona Lisa. But, paintings don't paint, that was a joke, by the way. So paintings don't paint themselves, right? So level 2, okay? So that's pretty basic. Everybody can do that, right? Do you believe buildings need builders? How much faith do that's all basic. We can do that. Those are good questions to ask people. Skeptics, atheists, agnostic, people who are thinking about this. Well, level 2, I call this jumping in the ring. So if we really want to get in there and throw a few, spiritual jabs and start to mix, talking to atheists can be actually kind of fun. I enjoy it sometimes, okay? Level 2, jumping in the ring, okay? This is quite interesting. How would you explain a universe from nothing? Can you explain how that happened? So now we're not talking about buildings and builders now. Let's talk about the universe, okay? A universe, because now remember we've talked about that the modern science has totally flipped 180, and that they now believe that the universe had a beginning. And so if you get a universe from a beginning, there has to be something to begin it, to start it. And so how can you explain how that happened? And just sit there and go, I want to see how they're going to spin this one. It's just fascinating to hear people's answers, right? Well, I think that the nothing exploded into something, and the nothingness exploded into something, and the something became the universe, and the universe became us. What do you mean by that? How'd you come to that conclusion, right? Last time I checked, a Big Bang needs a Big Banger. You can't get something from nothing, right? Usually when something bangs, there was something there to bang it. There was something. You can't get something out of nothing. So if there's a big bang, you need a big banger, right? If there's something that begun, you need something to begin it. I think that's how you say it, right? So, what's an example of nothing? If the universe, there was nothing there, nothing. And the universe started out of nothing. What's an example of nothing? Nothing is what rocks dream about. That's what nothing literally is. So if you're an atheist and you don't believe in God, and you're trying to spin a tale of how the universe came into existence literally out of nothing, the philosophical definition of nothing is literally what rocks dream about. Nothing. 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 I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. I'm sorry. If there was a big bang, there has to be a big banger, and there was someone to kickstart the whole thing, right? That's God. Well, we do have to end our talk tonight with a little bit for you scientific folk out there. You say, well, can you give a scientific, philosophical argument for the existence of God? And I would say, yes, you can. Now, can we scientifically prove God? No. I can't scientifically prove God, nor can someone scientifically disprove God. But can we give a scientific and philosophical argument for the existence of God? And I think we can. It's called the Kalam cosmological argument. It's gotten a lot of press and a lot of leeway, and it's primarily promoted by Dr. William Lane Craig. For you apologetic gurus out there, if you want to really dive into this, you can Google or YouTube Dr. William Lane Craig. He's the one that really kickstarted this into the modern popular mindset, and he has debated the most astute minds, and this argument is a showstopper. It's hard to weasel your way around this one, okay? What is the Kalam cosmological argument? So we're going to end on a big bang, as they say, okay? So here's the Kalam cosmological argument, okay? Whatever begins to exist has a cause. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. Is that true? Whatever begins to exist has a cause, right? This stand wasn't always here. It had a beginning. If this stand had a beginning, something caused it, right? This building wasn't always here. Something caused it. So things that begin to exist have a cause. That's a logical, philosophical argument. Things that begin to exist have a cause. There's not a lot of room for wiggle room on that one. Well, if that's true, then premise 2, the universe begun to exist. That's a scientific argument. So the first premise is logical and philosophical. The second one is a scientific argument. The universe begun to exist, right? Now, you would have said that 60, 50 years ago. You said, well, I don't know about that. But now we know that it's very well documented. So the universe begun to exist. So premise 3, therefore, the universe has a cause. So you see the line of argument here? If premises 1 and 2 are true, then premise 3 logically follows. You can't say premise 1 is true, premise 2 is true, therefore the conclusion doesn't follow. If premise 1 and 2 are true, therefore the conclusion logically follows that the universe has a cause. So, if everything that begins to exist has a cause, the universe begun to exist, therefore the universe has a cause, what would be the eternal, powerful, wise first cause to the universe? If the universe had a kickstart and there had to be something before it to kickstart it, to make it happen, something that didn't exist prior to the universe, what could be the eternal, powerful, first cause agent to kickstart the universe? Well, that's a good explanation for God. God is the best explanation for the cause of the universe. How many guys have heard the cosmological argument before? Raise your hand. 2 of you? Okay, good. Well, something new tonight, okay? Well, good. If you want to put your apologetic big boy pants on and really get to know this argument, this is a fun argument to really dive into. Well, before we close tonight and get some questions, let's just close lastly with atheist rebuttals. Well, I believe in science. That's always a good one, right? Well, I believe in science. Well, I do too. And? I do too. And? I'm so thankful for science. I mean, science, gives me Advil. I mean, there's Jesus, my family, and Advil. I mean, yeah, you got to thank whoever made Advil. They're geniuses, smart people, right? Got to love Advil. Advil's awesome, right? I love science. Science gave me Advil. Science gave me my car. And? What does science have to do with there not being a God? I mean, I don't get it. How can you help me explain that? Right? Can you weigh a chicken with a yardstick? I mean, right? I mean, what's the point? And you can't, we've gone through this, right? Science can only measure and determine physical things, and God's not something physical, therefore you can't put him in a test tube, a lab, a petri dish, and test him and prove that he exists or doesn't exist. This lecture is one of my favorite lectures on YouTube. It's called Miracles, is belief in the supernatural irrational, ? With John Lennox at Harvard. So here's John Lennox from Oxford giving this talk on God's existence and miracles at Harvard, and I just think he knocks it out of the park. It's very simple to understand, it's very clear, very good, and you can just feel the presence in the room like, yeah, this makes sense. This makes sense. Okay, I love that talk. Okay, now we don't have time tonight to talk about, oh yeah, well, where did God come from then? Well, if you'd like to answer that question, I'm going to have to leave you to YouTube on that one, and I can't answer that one tonight. But if you want to answer the question, well, who made God? If you believe in God, well, who made God? Right? That's a good one. So on your notes there. There's some lectures that you can talk about the whole question, well, who made God then, okay?